Hi children, today let we learn about Dalton's atomic theory. Well children, Dalton's atomic theory provided an explanation for the law of conservation of mass and the law of definite proportions. According to Dalton's atomic theory, all matter, whether an element or a compound or a mixture, is composed of small particles called atoms. So, based on these characteristics, he postulated certain postulates of his theory. Well, children, the postulates of Dalton's atomic theory are: firstly, all matter is made of very tiny particles called the atoms. Secondly, atoms are indivisible particles which cannot be created or destroyed in a chemical reaction. Thirdly, atoms of a given element are identical in mass and chemical properties. Atoms of different elements have different masses and chemical properties. And fifth one is atoms combine in the ratio of small whole numbers to form compounds. And finally, the relative number and kinds of atoms are constant in a given compound. So these are the major and main postulates of Dalton's atomic theory. Children, the atomic theory have some merits and demerits. Let us learn about the merits of Dalton's atomic theory. Children, this atomic theory has been proved to be very useful in various ways. That is, Dalton's atomic theory explains the laws of chemical combination, and Dalton was the first to recognize a workable distinction between the ultimate particle of an element, that is atom, and that of a compound, that is molecule. Though having these merits, the theory may also provided with the demerits. That is, the major demerits of Dalton's atomic theory are: atom is no longer considered as the smallest indivisible particle. It has been established that it is made up of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Atoms of the same element may have slightly different masses, say for example in case of isotopes. Substance made up of the same kind of atoms may have different properties. The ratio in which the different atoms combine to form compound may be fixed and integral, but may not be simple. Well, children, these are the important features of Dalton's atomic theory. And finally, we arrive at a conclusion that all matter is made of very tiny particles called atoms. Children, atoms It is the fundamental particle of an substance. See children, atoms are the smallest particles of an element which may have or may not have independent existence but take part in a chemical reaction. These are the building blocks of all matter. Say, for example, atoms of hydrogen, oxygen, atoms of nitrogen, etc., are not capable of independent existence, whereas atoms of helium, neon, etc., are capable of existing independently. Well, children, as we learned that atoms are very smallest particles and they are smaller than anything that we can imagine or compare with. More than millions of atoms, when stacked, would make a layer barely as thick as this sheet of paper. That means the atoms are very small and their radius is measured in nanometers. That means, in general, 1 by 10 to the power of 9 meter is equal to 1 nanometer, or 1 meter is equal to 10 to the power of 9 nanometer. For example, hydrogen atom is the smallest atom and its radius is 0.1 nanometer. That means that the atoms are with relatively smaller and smaller sizes, and the atoms may vary with their sizes to reference to different atoms of the elements. Well, children, as we learned that the matter is made up of atoms and they are very tiny in nature, and of course we should care about them. It's because the entire world which surrounds us is made up of atoms. We may not be able to see them, but they are there and constantly affecting whatever we do. So, through modern techniques, we can now produce magnified images of surfaces of elements showing atoms. As you are observing the image given in the respective page, that is with the title, an image of the surface of silicon. Isn't it, children? I hope so. You are observing the respective picture in the respective page. Well, children, these atoms of elements are indicated by the symbols. Well, Dalton was the first scientist to use the symbols for elements in a very specific sense. When he used a symbol for an element, he also meant a definite quantity of that element, that is, one atom of that element. In chemistry, symbols are the representation of an element. It is simple to use the symbol of an element rather writing a whole word of an element. Therefore, symbols are used to represent an element. So, Dalton was the scientist who introduced symbols for representing elements for the first time. Children, as you are observing the symbols for some elements as proposed by Dalton, it is given in the respective page. I hope you are observing the different symbols used for indicating the different elements. Isn't it, children? Well, so now for the first time Dalton introduced the symbols to represent element. Well, in the next class let me study about more regarding the symbols of elements. Thank you.